Yeah. Um, I'll give you the Spark Notes version. My sister woke me up at like 5 a.m. one time because my truck was behind hers in the driveway and she needed to go to school. And she would move my truck, but then she couldn't get my key out of the ignition. And turns out she put the truck in neutral instead of park, and you can't take the key out unless it's in park. And I was like, dude, it's 5 a.m. Like, I was like an undergrad too. So I was like tired. I don't know. But yeah, whatever. It wasn't her brightest moment. Uh-huh. I'm just a baby. All right, so disorders of renal function is what we're going to talk about first. So renal pathology, it's pathologically significant. It's been an uptrend in America over the past few years. This is 2017 statistics, so it's 5 years old. I haven't done a reboot on that, but I can't imagine these trends fundamentally shift at all. But it affects a significant number of people, and it's not only a problem in North America, but all over the world. As you can see, the country distributions: Egypt, Middle East, Mexico seems to be a problem. So what we're studying, I guess, is significant. So we're going to look at what normal function looks like, and I can make a handout if y'all really need a revamp about how the kidney works. But usually physiology classes love the kidney because it's a complicated thing, and so they love going over it. So I figured y'all went over kidney function pretty well last semester. But we're going to talk about kind of how we measure kidney function, and we're going to go over acute kidney injury and chronic kidney disease. So acute and chronic versions of this stuff, and then end-stage renal disease. We'll have a couple slides. And then there are some patient cases at the end that, if we have time, we'll go over, but if not, y'all can just look over yourselves. But it's a good example about kind of how you look at these issues and what kind of test questions might be out there. So hopefully y'all seen this. So this is the functions of kidneys, and the acronym that you can use to remember it is a wet bed. So the kidney regulates acid-base balance, water removal, the production of red blood cells, toxin removal, controls blood pressure with hormones, and as we'll see in our last lecture today, and it regulates electrolyte balance and vitamin D activation. So it does a lot, right? And so, as you can imagine, if you got problems to this one organ, that you have a significant number of problems that kind of present. So the first thing is that the kidney regulates how much urine you produce, right? And so, and all that happens through glomerular function. So you can measure glomerular filtration rate, how well your glomerulus is filtering out your blood. And the thing is that it reabsorbs, so it absorbs everything from your blood, and then your nephrons can gradually reabsorb whatever needs to be reabsorbed, whether it be salt or water or numerous other things. And so there's this thing of filtration and reabsorption, right? And so what we need to figure out a chemical, like scientists needed to figure out a chemical that only gets filtered, that doesn't get reabsorbed at all. And they found this one molecule called creatinine. And that's not to be confused with creatine, which is a molecule that a lot of biochemists and physiologists talk about, because it provides short-term phosphorylation of short-term phosphodonor for like short-term energy. So like a lot of like high school athletes will take creatine, and what it'll give you is that if you have more creatine in your body, you have more like short-term bursts. So it'd be very useful for things like sprinters or football players, or rather than those like long distance type stuff. But it provides short-term energy to your body, right? So creatine's a great phosphodonor. There is a downstream metabolite called Oh, so you can see phosphocreatine there, right? That's where the phosphate group lies on the creatine. There is a downstream metabolite of it. So that's found in the cytoplasm of cells, creatine. When it gets out of the body, it gets metabolized into creatinine, and that's effectively just not a toxin, but it's like a waste product. And so this is a great thing for your kidney to remove because your kidney removes waste products, right? So this gets filtered and your body doesn't need to reabsorb it because it's kind of a useless thing when it's in this creatinine form rather than creatine. And so it gets filtered and doesn't get reabsorbed. So it's a great molecule to measure how well is your glomerulus filtering out your blood. So you can measure how much creatinine is in your blood, is in your urine, and it gives an indication of what the glomerular filtration rate is. Make sense? So normal ranges, which is something I want y'all to know, is greater than 90 milliliters per minute per 1.73 square meters of is the creatinine levels. And that declines with age for a number of reasons. So just make sure you understand the glomerular filtration rate. So if you have less than 60, that indicates chronic kidney disease. Your kidney is not filtering out blood very well. And then a fall in glomerular filtration rate always precedes kidney failure because it's only filtered and not reabsorbed. So first thing we're going to talk about is acute kidney injury. So this is something that happens very, very quickly and it can be caused by a number of things: viruses, hypoxia, and anoxia. Most common in people already hospitalized, particularly in the ICU, can be fatal. Intensive treatments, and if you're in good health, normally these things recover, and you recover normally, and you have a normal kidney function. So what'll happen is you have different versions of acute kidney injury. And so there are, depending on where the injury occurs. So there's a number of things that can cause injury, but we try to classify these things based off of if it's pre-renal, meaning this is something to the vessel supplying, the blood supply that supplies the kidney, that gets filtered by the kidney. If there's some type of problem with that blood vessel, then that would be a pre-renal condition. There's post-renal condition, which is the urine flow is blocked, and so there's inadequate drainage. So we're talking about stuff that is more in this duct. You can imagine things like kidney stones. That is a post-renal, probably the most common post-renal blockage. And then there is, it is in bold. There you go. And then there's intrinsic problems where you have the actual kidney is injured in and of itself. It's not the blood supply to or the collecting duct from, but it is the kidney function is decreased. So this is problems with the glomerulus or the interstitial portion or the vasculature within the kidney itself. There's also these intratubular obstructions. So there's there's all these tubes right within the nephrons that actually do the filtering and reabsorption. That's actually part of the nephron. So don't get intratubular obstruction confused with the collecting duct where you have this post-renal blockage, which isn't actually part of the nephrons themselves. So just make sure to get that. Confused. So the number one cause so there's a lot of things that cause acute kidney injury. So these injuries to the kidney, and it ranges from everything from a straight blunt, like trauma to the kidney, but a very common one, the number one cause is this acute tubular necrosis, ATN, and that is where you have necrosis of the kidney tissues, right? So this is a intrinsic version of it. And so, right, necrosis means that your tissue's dying, right? So this is things that are just killing your kidney. And so this is things like NSAIDs. This is why they tell you don't take too much of this Tylenol that you need so drastically. And other antibiotics can cause this if you have long-term antibiotics are pretty concentrated whenever you take them, and it makes sense because they need to be distributed broadly across your entire body. But they hit your kidney kind of hard, and so if you take a lot of antibiotics over long periods of time, they can get problematic. But then things like hypotension and iodated contrast dyes, they all can be toxic to the kidney tissue itself, and it can cause it to necrose, and then you have acute kidney disease. Now, what's great is, just like we said with acute kidney disease, that if you're generally healthy and you stop doing these things, then there can be a recovery and a replenishment of everything, and it can get better.
Does it replenish on its own?
I think so, but I don't know fully, because it certainly stops the necrosis from happening. And I imagine the cells can regrow back. I don't think that's one of the non-dividing cells that you talk about, like most neurons and other parts, right? Eyeball cells and stuff. But good question. I can ask I have a friend who's actually a nephrologist, I think is what he's called. He's a kidney doctor, and I can ask him what recovery is like for acute kidney disease. Yeah, so this doesn't look pretty, polycystic kidney disease. But so there are a lot of problems that cause intrinsic kidney disease. So you can see here, this is a good picture of the cysts that can develop on the kidney. There's also congenital issues where your kidney doesn't develop properly. And then there's glomerular issues where you have things like the immune cells attacking your kidney. So you have this autoimmune diseases, proliferative membranous sclerotic, and then bacterial infections can also kill your kidney. So all these, at the end of the day, all these are just things that y'all have to generally memorize to that just are toxic to what the kidney is. You can see here that these there's a way to take. You can see here that in this picture, there's a lot of immune cells in your kidney, and that's not supposed to be the case. That's not one of your. It's not like your gut or your lungs, where you're supposed to have a lot of your immune system in your kidney. The kidney's supposed to be relatively immune free, and then you can see here there's a ton of immune cells here. So, and then obviously things like cancers, right? If you have abnormal growth of, you can imagine if you have a cancer of something that's right outside the collecting ducts of the kidney, then if you have this growth that's pinching on that tube, there can't be normal urine flow out of the kidney to the bladder. And so cancers can also, as a post-renal cause of things. But then also, right, if you have a cancer of the kidney itself, that's going to be an intrinsic version, or cancers of the blood supply, right? It can be all of them, but yeah, cancers will muck up the kidney function. Epithelial cell tumors, because your kidney cells are epithelial cells. Oh, there's another TV over there. Yeah, that's convenient. And then there's complications with acute kidney disease. That there's this is what patients are going to say that is the problem that can kind of target in on these things. That is fluid buildup, chest pain, and muscle weakness. And so there can be a buildup of fluid in the lungs, shortness of breath. The pericardium can come inflamed, and that will cause these chest pains, and then muscle weakness, fluid and electrolyte imbalances. Muscle weakness and elevated potassium in the blood is very dangerous. Again, potassium is one of these things that are regulated by the kidneys, so if it's not being regulated properly, excess calcium is problematic. And then this can lead to eventual permanent kidney damage. And we will talk about how when you have permanent kidney damage, that leads to chronic kidney disease. And ultimately, if you don't regulate your kidney because it does so much, because it provides such a benefit to your body, these buildup of these toxins and improper buffers and everything like that can lead to death eventually. But yeah, so your acute kidney disease can progress to chronic kidney disease, and this is even more dangerous. So acute kidney disease, it is bad, don't get me wrong, but it's usually recoverable from. Chronic kidney disease is a much more severe problem. And this is where you have the kidney damage for long term, 3 or more months, and you have irreversible loss of nephron number and function. So you cannot recover from this. And so clinically, this is defined as a glomerular filtration rate of less than 60 milliliters per minute per 1.73 meters squared for greater than 3 months with or without evidence of kidney damage. So if your GFR is not functioning properly, then even though it might look like there's no necrotic tissue or anything like that, you'd still have chronic kidney disease.
Is that Denzel
If it's Denzel Washington, if it's Denzel Washington in your head, it can be Denzel Washington. How is that? All right. So there are things that cause chronic kidney disease: diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and a family history of kidney failure. That's like a genetic predisposition to it. So you can kind of put together why these things might be problematic. If your kidney cells are not getting the proper nutrition and normal amounts of glucose, like it is with diabetes, and you have other metabolic problems, the kidney is not a privileged or it's not something that is immune to the effects of diabetes. And then high blood pressure, obviously you have a lot of blood going through the kidney at a consistent amount of time. That pressure will build up. You'll have a lot of glomerular filtration, and then your kidney just can't keep up with the high amounts of blood pressure that are feeding the kidney, and so you have problems with that. And that can develop into chronic kidney disease, and then heart disease, same thing. So all these are like metabolic or circulatory problems, right? And that that makes sense because the circulation is what feeds the kidneys, and that's what needs to be filtered out. And then obviously a family history of kidney. It's just a genetic disposition of this. So there's a lot of causes of this stuff, and this is a more in-depth look. But the big thing that I kind of want y'all to intuit is this atherosclerosis, where you have a hardening of the arteries, an increase in blood pressure. You have more filtration through the kidney, and because of that, it's overtaxed, and so because it's overtaxed, it just can't keep up with the atherosclerosis. It can't keep up with the functions that the kidneys provide for the body, and so atherosclerosis is one that I just want y'all to know for the test, as well as these other 4 right here. There are different stages of chronic kidney disease. I'm not expecting y'all to memorize this, but it's not one of these on or off switches. It is a gradual bell curve of issues that progress over time and get worse and worse as things go, and eventually lead to just straight up kidney failure. To where if you don't get dialysis or a kidney transplant, it's just going to lead to death. This is a big.
I have a question. Could you get off of dialysis?
If you get a transplant, easily, right? But
So it's not like once it gets to the part of dialysis, there's no way you can get off of that.
Generally, the rule is if you're to that point with chronic kidney disease, then you won't just like magically start going back unless you get a kidney transplant. But maybe there's some weird scenarios that result in that. I don't know fully. Another question for wait, what? Yeah, eventually, that's definitely the trend. Well, it's just like your kidney, and this is the important here. It's just your kidney does so much, right? So this is a nice little chart that kind of summarizes why you kind of intuit people dying, right? So sodium and water balance, potassium balance, regulation of nitrogenous waste, production of erythropoietin, which stimulates blood growth, acid-base balance, activation of vitamin D, and phosphate elimination. Right? You can when you have too much potassium in your body, right? All the cells interact with potassium, right? Insofar as it's part of your electrochemical gradients, which are absolutely critical, right? Your sodium potassium pumps, right? Electrolytes do so much in your body, and your kidney is what regulates your electrolytes, right? And electrolytes also, whether they're a hydrogen ion or not, right? And it's pH and electrolytes aren't that different of concepts insofar as they're both just ions that are positively and negatively charged. And so when you dysregulate these ions in your body, your cells just are freaking out because you can't drive things like the sodium potassium pump. The sodium potassium pump's really important for muscle contraction and generation of ATP through the ATP synthetase. And so it just does so much, right? Neurons firing correctly, heart regulation. Like you learn about ions in so many parts in biology. When it gets dysregulated because you don't have a kidney that's regulating the proper concentrations of stuff, problems arise, right? And that's just the ion side of things. The kidney does even more than that, right? The elimination of nitrogenous waste. This is how you get like all those byproducts of when you metabolize amino acids and stuff like that. It's all you need to eliminate waste from your body, and this is how your kidney does it. Phosphate elimination, and then even producing erythropoietin. You need to keep up with your blood supply to provide proper oxygen to your body, right? So when any of these things go wrong, they're such physiologically important things. I can't emphasize this enough. They're so physiologically important processes that when they go wrong, kidney disease is a hard thing to overcome.
Aren't the normal values for potassium 3.5 to 5?
Maybe, yeah, probably, sure.
It's so crazy to see. Like, if any one of these things go wrong, you literally could die.
So the thing is with kidney disease, it's kind of the culmination. Like your body has compensatory mechanisms that if it's just potassium problems, your body can start to regulate those things a little bit better, but they do that with other ions, right? They do that with hydrogen ions and sodium and stuff like that. But the problem is that kidney failure, it messes up all your electrolytes and all your hydrogen ions, right? And so there's like very little compensatory things to fall back on for when you like if you don't eat a lot of calcium, what happens? You might cramp whenever you potassium. You might cramp a little bit whenever you work out, but like you drink a Gatorade, you restore those your potassium levels, and then you're regulated again. Because your body's it's a balance, right? And yeah, and that's the concept that I want to emphasize is that your kidney regulates that balance. So loss of that is just so critical. So these are some of the symptoms that you get from this. You get uremia, which is increased creatinine levels. Your blood urea nitrogen goes up because you're not regulating it. Creatine, you're not filtering things properly, and so you get a buildup in your blood of these nitrogenous compounds. So obviously altered fluid and electrolyte and acid-base balances, cardiovascular complications. You have increased blood volume because you're not filtering out the proper amount of liquid. You don't have the filtrate that goes through your kidneys. That you're not filtering it properly. So you have things like hypertension because you just have too much volume of blood going through your in your cardiovasculature, and you have things like GI disorders, which can lead to anorexia, nausea, and vomiting. There are also mineral metabolism disorders, the calcification of bone and bone disease. Right. So calcium is just another one of these ions that is regulated by the kidney. So whenever you don't have proper amounts of calcium, your bones, and we'll learn this later in the semester, your bones go through constant modification. There's constant and needed destruction of bone that's followed by rebuilding of bone, and it's a great way of your body that to adjust to whatever the bone demands are, that we're not wasting a lot of energy. If you have a 9-to-5 desk job where you're not walking at all, you're not wasting a lot of energy maintaining that bone density. But if you are like a NFL linebacker and you're just constantly have that contact and you need strong bones, your body can constantly adapt to that demand. But what that means is that the calcified, bone is just calcified cartilage effectively. And so you're constantly depositing calcium into your bones on a regular maintenance basis. And so whenever you don't have the calcium in your bone, you get weakened bones, even though you might have a demand to have strong bones, and so you have bone diseases and stuff like that. And same thing goes with vitamin D, pretty much, which is important vitamin for bone strength. So with chronic kidney disease, it also is associated with decreased inflammation and immunity and central and peripheral nerve system alterations. But we're not going to go into these things as much because they're kind of secondary to the direct cause. There's also sexual dysfunction and skin disorders. Yeah, they do. That's why they call it a kidney bean, right? Right.
Yes, that's ridiculous. So ghetto.
Wait, what?
You know, back that ass up the song? Like, you would know.
Maybe not.
You know that song. If I put it on, you're gonna know.
Okay, let's just assume I do. What? Frequent Tigerland song. Yeah.
June 11th is now Back That Ass Up Day in New Orleans.
Oh. Damn, we missed it by 2 days. Or maybe you didn't.
And
I don't know.
Yesterday, I'm like, damn, maybe they should fix. I'm sorry, I'm going off.
A little bit, yeah.
Fix the pumps, so that the drainage system can work correctly. Fix the potholes. And then no, we're gonna have June 11th. That's Back That Ass Up Day. And then yesterday, there's no AC in the coroner's office, so people are just rotting. In New Orleans, but they decided to do Back That Ass Up Day.
New Orleans is a dying city.
It's a simulation.
Anyway, anemia. So yeah, you can also get anemia, right? And we've talked about this pretty extensively, where when you don't have erythropoietin and proper iron levels, iron's another ion regulated by the kidney, and that's what goes into that binding site on that heme that interacts with the oxygen of hemoglobin. When you don't have the proper levels, you have anemia that pop up from chronic kidney disease as well. So, chronic kidney disease is an irreversible long-term condition. Should be monitored and treated in the early stages to optimize outcomes and slow deterioration. And when people have this, you have to go through dialysis, which is just like a machine that simulates kidney function, that it will remove the nitrogenous wastes and regulate the ion and pH levels in a way that, if you don't have a proper functioning kidney, will restore some normalcy to your body levels. And then transplants, where you just get someone else's kidney can be very impactful. Yeah, the problem with dialysis, right, is that you have to consistently get it. It's like 3 to 5 times a week people go in, and it's just a lot of time. And it's like, I think it's like 1 to 2 hours every single time, and so it's like, and then you got to travel to and from the hospital. It's a lot, right? So that's why transplants are really important for these kind of patients. The transplant failed, yeah, which happens. Yeah, it's not an easy time. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I don't think I know anyone who has kidney disease, but I just hear these stories on the news and stuff and like that. Health, man. All right, so eventually it'll lead to end-stage renal disease. Patient becomes where it's end stage to where you're just pretty much you don't have proper kidney function insofar as it'll eventually lead to death, and unless you get one of these transplants. These things do not affect this population in the same manner insofar that you have a 3.7 times increased being an African American, and about 1.5 for Asians and Native Americans. Another one of these just I don't know if that's a genetic problem or a systematic problem, admittedly. It could be like a problem that we don't have good public health education of these populations, or it could be genetic issues as well. So I have to look into why these don't affect people equivalently, but I don't know. We'd have to look more into that. But and as far as the causes of end-stage renal disease, it's a lot of the same stuff that causes chronic kidney disease, and so things like diabetes, hypertension, problems with the actual the tissue itself, and then cysts on the kidney as well are an important. So that's it for that. So generally speaking, what I want y'all to know is that the functions of what it does, of what the kidney does, and then whenever these things go wrong, why you might have some of the outcomes that you have. But then just focus on the bolded items, and I'm sure you'll do well on the test. Any questions there?